They left her for dead on a beach that didn't exist on any map. Concrete pinned her chest, shrapnel burned through muscle, and blood salted her eyes. The only sound left was the distant chop of helicopter rotors fading into silence. Her team, her own people, were already gone. But here's what they never understood. You can't kill someone who was trained to die, and you sure as hell can't abandon someone who never learned the meaning of surrender. Before we show you how Chief Petty Officer Mara Keating clawed her way out of that grave with nothing but a broken rifle and sheer defiance, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because the next 3 minutes will remind you why they call it the silent service. Some sounds you never forget. The cough of an engine choking out in hostile waters, the wet slap of waves against a Zodiac hull when you're still 5 clicks from shore, the whispered curse of a team leader watching his mission clock turn to ash. Out! Captain Harlan's voice cut through the dark like steel on bone. No hesitation, no debate. The kind of order you follow even when every nerve screams it's wrong. Operators don't second-guess, they execute. Mara went over the side without a ripple. The North Atlantic slammed her like a hammer. Cold so vicious it punched the air from her lungs and turned her arms into stone. But she didn't panic. She never did. She'd been swimming waters like this since she was 10, trailing her grandfather's lobster traps off the Maine coast. Cold was just another enemy you learned to break. 18 years in the Navy, 13 with special operations, Somalia, the Philippines, places that didn't exist on maps, missions no one would ever read about. She had dragged Marines through 80 meters of open ground with mortars chasing her every step, held a pilot's hand steady while calling in medevac through a rain of fire. And in all that time, not once, not ever had she lost a soul under her watch. The shoreline loomed ahead, a knife edge of black sand beneath cliffs jagged as broken teeth. Above it clung the ruins of dour shacks blown apart by years of war, still smoldering like ghosts of a village, and somewhere up there, hidden in that wreckage, waited the ambush that would leave her buried and forgotten, until she proved otherwise. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. We want to see how far this community reaches. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next military story. They moved as if heading into safety. The militia escorts promised a straight path, awaiting contact, nothing more than a handoff in the village square. But Mara had worn the uniform too long to buy promises that neat. Every shuttered window, every echo of boots on stone was another knot in her stomach. Her instincts sharpened when she caught the eyes of locals. Their hands waved politely, but their gaze didn't linger on the seals. They flicked upward to rooftops, to alleys with angles too clean, elevated ground, kill zones. The warning never made it past her lips. A flash cut the street in half. The second floor of a house folded outward in fire, raining shards of wood and stone. Contact Rodriguez's shout was drowned in the roar. The escorts vanished as if they had rehearsed it, 1 second at the SEAL's side, the next behind sandbags and windows, rifles leveled not in defense but in ambush. Betrayal no longer needed proof, it was spelled out in muzzle flashes. Mara dropped low, cheek welded to her rifle. The alley lit with strobe bursts of gunfire, rounds snapping so close they carried heat. Chen crumpled with a scream, Harland lunging to drag him into cover. Multiple shooters, elevated. Harland barked, voice a controlled whip crack. The SEALs scattered into survival lanes. Rodriguez laid down covering fire. Johnson sprinted for a better angle, only for his rifle to seize mid-burst. Jammed with grit, he cursed, slamming the charging handle, metal grinding like teeth. Commander Hale's voice cut through the chaos, steady but edged with urgency. Mayday, Mayday. This is Echo Team. Effective fire from multiple positions, requesting immediate air support. Danger close. The only reply was static. storm interference chewing the signal to pieces. No lifeline, no command, only the math of survival in a box canyon filled with fire. A second explosion slammed the street, hurling dust and bodies alike. Williams tumbled across stone, his scream cut off by the crack of bone against a wall. Mara blinked grit from her eyes, heartbeat thundering louder than gunfire. Still they fought. Harlan's rifle thundered in bursts, guiding the younger men through controlled chaos. "Cover the flank, Rodriguez. Suppress that balcony." His orders snapped the team into cohesion, every move costing blood but buying seconds. Yet seconds were running out. An RPG streaked from a window, spiraling into the burned-out husk of a truck. The fireball slammed the team sideways. Mara hit the ground, her helmet ringing as if a bell had been struck inside her skull. Rocket Team Building 2, Harlan roared, but the warning came too late. A second warhead ripped free, detonating just behind their makeshift cover. The blast folded walls inward, a roar that drowned everything else. Mara didn't remember falling. She remembered only the weight. A slab of concrete slammed across her arm, ribs seizing in fire with every breath. Her rifle lay twisted out of reach, smoke rolling over her like poison, shapes blurred in the haze. Commander Hale hauled Johnson toward the alley, blood painting the young SEAL's sleeve. Rodriguez fired in arcs, giving cover as Harlan pulled Chen's limp form step by brutal step. Above them, unseen shooters raked the kill zone, tracers splitting the dusk. Then came the sound that froze every man, the thump of rotors. A Blackhawk, low and fast, slicing through smoke. Its downdraft whipped fire into whirlwinds. For an instant, salvation felt close enough to touch. Mara tried to scream, to raise a hand pinned under stone. Her throat tore with the effort. The bird was already under fire. RPG trails clawed skyward, missing by yards. Then inches. The door gunners spat fire in reply, but the air was thick with threats. Rotor wash kicked debris across the alley like shrapnel. Commander Hale's face was hard granite. He met Harlan's eyes. The weight of command heavier than the rubble pinning Mara. Another 30 seconds on the ground, and they'd all die where they stood. Harlan's jaw clenched, fury boiling beneath discipline. But he dragged the wounded faster, barking at the others to move. The ramp closed. The Blackhawk clawed skyward, banking hard, its shadow retreating through tracer fire. Mara lay half-buried, staring as her lifeline vanished into smoke. The thunder of rotors faded, replaced by the hiss of flames and the crack of rifles closing in. Her family had lifted away, and she was still here, alone. Nobody was looking for her. That much was carved into the wreckage boots already gone. Bodies dragged away, radios buzzing with final reports that had stamped her KIA. Mara moved like a scavenger priest, efficient, unsentimental, focused only on what still had value. Her rifle was a mangled relic, but she found a half-loaded magazine, a field dressing, damp but sealed, still held sterile. Her fighting knife had lost its handle. Yet the steel was true. Most important was the radio. Its case spiderwebbed with cracks. One antenna snapped clean off. Battery bleeding 15%. Weak. Fragile. But it was everything. She bound the dressing tight across her torn forearm, turned strips of undershirt into a crude knee brace, and angled away from the harbor. That path would be watched. Survivors would be funneled toward the village, toward predictable extraction sites. She wanted the opposite. High ground, concealment, horizon, a place to send a whisper across the sea. The cliff above the village loomed like jagged teeth, 120 feet of brittle rock. At its crown clung Post Echo 3, a Cold War listening post, half dead but still stubborn. If she could reach it, she could shelter the radio and steal copper for an antenna. The climb was punishment. Every pull shredded her shoulder, Every push lit her knee on fire. Twice loose stone betrayed her, nearly casting her back to the ruins. Halfway up she paused on a ledge, chest heaving, blood soaking her brace. She could have let the cliff take her, but surrender was not in her DNA. She climbed. The bunker greeted her like a scar from another war concrete pitted. Door rusted, Cyrillic slogans bleeding faded red. Inside stank of mold and rust. Perfect. The comms rack was stripped bare, but copper veins still threaded the walls. Copper meant hope. She tore conduit, spliced wire, lashed a crude antenna to the broken whip. The battery blinked down to 5%. The signal was a whisper, but a whisper on the right frequency. Too short. One long, their alternate distress code. Static clawed at her ears. Then a voice. Unknown station. Authenticate. Her throat cracked. Greyhawk 7. Alive. Sustained injuries. Team extracted without me. Silence. Then Greyhawk 7. This is Viper Base. We show you KIA at 0600. Confirm status. Her hand shook. Confirm I am alive. Coordinates inbound. Holding position. Static softened into salvation copy. Assets inbound, ETA 25 minutes. Can you maintain security for the first time in hours? She allowed a breath. The book wasn't closed. Somewhere, maps were redrawn, paths recalculated. Rescue was now math, not myth, but safety was a lie. From the shattered window she saw flashlights sweep the beach. Voices crawled up the cliff Spanish, clipped, organized. Militia. Their boots rang in the maintenance tunnels behind her. She armed herself with what remained knife blade. Radio. A length of rebar. She slipped into the tunnels, muffling gear against the stone. The radio chirped again, an update, a waypoint, the clock ticking down. Then another voice bled through. Clear Spanish on the militia's tactical net. They have a transmitter at the top. She's moving for the cliff. Hold and intercept. Mara's pulse didn't spike. It steadied. Someone was listening on the same channel as Viper Base. Someone had heard everything. She had 25 minutes. The tunnel was darkness, but darkness could hide either rescue or an ambush sharpened to a blade. 45 seconds later. A boot scuffed at the entrance. Help was coming. Mara wedged herself into the rocks, every second stretching like a mile. 30 minutes of survival could feel longer than 30 years of living. From the tunnel she had escaped. Militia voices crept closer, eager for the kill. She answered them with silence and steel. The first man never screamed. Rebar punched his throat. His body dragged into shadow before the others noticed. By the time they realized, Mara already had his rifle, his pistol, and most important, his radio. Their hunt became her theater. She listened to every word, every arrogant assumption that she was broken prey. She let them believe. Then she shattered it. A shot cracked from her stolen rifle. Another body fell, and her voice sliced across their frequency. This is the dead American. 2 down. Who's next? Fear bled into their commands. They told each other she was bluffing. She made sure they knew she wasn't. Each round she fired, each lie she spun about Navy boats inbound, forced them to choose between courage and survival. They chose retreat. Boots scraped into the dark, leaving her alone with the sea. The silence was heavier than the gunfire. Only the waves and her ragged breath remained until faint lights flickered on the horizon. Sleek, fast, black silhouettes cut across the water. Her people, extraction was flawless, professional. Yet when the SEALs offered hands to lift her, Mara refused. She climbed down under her own power every step, a rejection of the fate that had tried to bury her alive, on the destroyer, beneath antiseptic lights and the bitter comfort of coffee. Her body finally sagged. But her voice stayed iron as she delivered her report, every detail of the ambush, every trace of betrayal. Someone had sold them out. She swore the debt would be collected. Weeks later, networks fell like dominoes, safe houses burned, leaders disappeared, supply lines snapped. Official communiques called it a joint task force success. Those who knew whispered something simpler: the enemy had left a Navy SEAL for dead, and the mistake cost them everything. Mara never called it victory. She wore scars instead, proof that survival is less about perfection than persistence. Written off, buried, abandoned, yet she lived. Because the strongest weapon isn't always the rifle in your hands, it's the refusal to quit when the world has already counted you out. And that truth is the lesson being left behind doesn't end the story. Sometimes, it begins the chapter they'll never forget.